In case you haven't heard, the bird is the word. What's up, dogs? It's Cameron with Venus Theory, and in this video we're here to check out another UVI Falcon tutorial tip thing that I like to do within Falcon. So in this video we're going to be taking a look at how I like to use Falcon to design drum sounds and reshape things and process sound within Falcon to get a new unique sample of some kind. So in this video we're going to be taking a look at a snare drum. However, this all applies to different drum sounds like hi-hats or kicks or whatever you want to do, because Falcon is absolutely insanely powerful and can do pretty much anything you want. So let's dive in and get started. Alright guys, so in this video I wanted to show you how I use UVI Falcon to make drum sounds and process drums and make new drums out of old drums. So this is just layering and processing using all of the stuff in Falcon, because this provides a really nice environment for sound design purposes, especially because you can combine samples with synths and all sorts of stuff just all in one without having to mess about with a bunch of inserts and MIDI and all this other stuff. So first things first, let's go ahead and disable all of the effects, and we'll just go a layer at a time here. So what I've done is layer up 6 different things. So this first one is just an acoustic vinyl snare, pretty much all there is to it. And I just drag this in with the straight sampler, and I've set the note tracking to 0%. This means it won't change pitch as I change keys, as you can see here. From here, I adjusted the amplitude envelope to get rid of the sustain and only utilized the decay, and then repeated this with another vinyl snare sample, which is this one right here. Followed this up with a bit of vinyl or tape noise, I believe, and just used the decay once again, just to provide a little bit of noise. It's not very apparent, but it will become more apparent as we add more processing. This goes into 2 different drum oscillators. So I just made a drum here using a sine wave. Note tracking is at 0%, so that way it doesn't change pitch as I change keys, because I know I can just bounce this out as a one shot and use a frequency shifter to do that later. So this is the settings here. This isn't really all that important. Just experiment until you make something that seems to work. Another drum oscillator here. I just got the clappish preset and tweaked a couple of things. This was just to add a bit of high end and noise. Then finally, one last percussion sample here. This is just a Foley sample. Didn't touch the envelope here because didn't really matter, just set note tracking to 0%. Once you combine all of these, you get this, which is a pretty decent snare drum sound, and it doesn't sound anything like any single one of these parts, which is what's really cool about doing things this way. So after this, we get into a bunch of effects. After all the effects are said and done, it sounds like this. So we get a really, really nice snare. So to do this, you can just go to your effects tab here. There's a ton of effects in Falcon, which is why it's really, really fun for sound design and making different things, because it allows you to do pretty much whatever you want. So I started things off with analog crunch here. We can go ahead and just disable these and add them one at a time so I can show you what everything is doing and why. So analog crunch, just for a bit of distortion. So before the analog crunch sounds like this. After sounds like this. So it just adds a little bit of kind of bark to the low, mids, and mid-range, somewhere probably around 500 hertz or so. So after this, 3-band compressor. So multi-band compression, left the ratios at 10, didn't really touch anything other than the threshold and makeup. And that's really where the snappiness of this snare comes from. So after that, added an overdrive. These are the settings here. And this trash in particular is where things start to get interesting. So I mix this in only at 18%, but if I mix it in on the way, you get this really kind of aggressive snare. So I wanted to just get that kind of flavor to it, just back it off a bit. After this, an 8-band EQ. This is with a resonant peak and a high shelf. So I just found kind of where the tone of the drum is by sweeping around here. So right around there, and then just adjust the gain to taste. You could do just a little boost, or get really extreme. So right about there seemed to be good, and just a high shelf to boost up the high end because it was getting a bit lost after all the distortion. This goes into a convolver, which is convolution. Reverb, it makes things sound really cool. Won't get into it too much. Convolution reverb is awesome for different things. Try it out sometime. Dry 33.6%, wet 53.6%. This is the tape 1. So before that and after. Just makes it a little bit more dirty and weird. This goes into redo here. This is a sampler emulator, which is probably one of my favorite things to play around with in Falcon, especially because it includes a mix. So this is the ASR 16-bit 44.1K preset. So before, after, subtle, but the difference is there. It just kind of dirties it up a little bit more because I wanted that kind of tonal drum, but I wanted it to sound more like an acoustic drum, like it was, you know, an actual drum being hit and not just some synthesized drum sound. After this, the IR verb here. This is the revisited room impulse. Time at 35% or so. Pre-delay of about 30 milliseconds. Width up to about 50%. Pre-delay is important with drums, and I can kind of demonstrate why if I turn the wet up here. So this is going to be a little extreme, but this is what it would sound like with no pre-delay. Which is fine, but with a little bit of pre-delay, like 30 milliseconds or so, it lets that initial transient poke through just a bit more to keep things nice and snappy. So the more extreme example, so I just back this off until I think, you know, I can clearly detect that initial transient and then mix in the wet. So right about there sounds good. So now we've got this really cool little snare drum, and from here we could bounce this out to audio. And because it is kind of a tonal snare, after the fact, when I use it again, I can just use a frequency shifter to tune it to my track. Or just destroy it and make something weird. So that is all there is to it.
And that's it for this video, guys. So thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon.